Hello, everybody, and welcome on into another episode of the Guardians of the CLE podcast. And we got breaking news for you guys. The bats are alive. I got my co-host James Ellifritz with me here today, outside enjoying this nice weather. And James, the Guardians sure took advantage of that nice weather in Baltimore this week. 4 straight games with 4 runs or more. I never thought I'd say it this year.
Well, it's just like Will Brennan. We love to kill birds. We just took 2 series back to back, finally won back-to-back series against the Cardinals and the Orioles. Today, that's exactly how you want to get on a plane, is have a very nice offensive game. Of course, I was at work. I got to miss most of it, but I caught the end. 12 runs today is fantastic. Looking through the box score, even seeing Miles Straw at least get a walk. At least Cam Gallagher even still got a hit. But Naylor was the guy. 6 RBIs today. So phenomenal
Season
game.
high, of course.
Yeah.
There were games
Jose...
that took us a week to score 6 runs. Naylor just drove 6 of them in tonight like it was nothing.
We've been overdue, and we've been talking about it. And I've tried to remain optimistic, about the offense, that we're going to come around. Memorial Day is past. June 1st is tomorrow. I think really now this is our turning point in the season. We go into Minnesota, have that opportunity to cut into that division lead. So I think we're heading in the right direction, Mel.
Yeah, and it's funny because once we got to Baltimore, it kind of, even in a loss yesterday, it felt so good just seeing the offense show fight. Obviously, Cal Quantrill gave him a terrible outing. He went out and he ate some innings. Might be his last start of the year. The writing's kind of on the wall. We'll get into the rotation in a minute, but even in a loss, like you see guys like Andres Jimenez starting to hit the ball. Josh Naylor has had a great month of May. Obviously, Jose Ramirez, continuing the momentum from his walk-off hit on Sunday. And something about Camden Yards, it just gets those bats rolling. And you mentioned the 2 straight series wins, and these weren't against like the Royals and the Nationals. Like everybody was saying how the Cardinals were rolling again. They're going to come and take over the NL Central. And the Guardians just emotional roller coaster like they do with us, right? They do it all the time with us. But again, Tanner Bibee, sensational start against the Cardinals. Saturday night, the heartbreak. Our pitching gives up 2 hits in that start. 2 hits St. Louis had, and we lose the game on a pass ball in extra innings. And David Fry, it's just another thing that irks me. Like, you're not putting guys in the best situation to win all the time. When you have David Fry, a guy who doesn't even catch full time, and he's behind the plate late in a game, and it ends up costing you the game. But then Sunday, you come back, you bounce back. It's kind of neck and neck the whole game Sunday. You really want to win that series. It looked like they were going to come up short, right? Because Hunter Gaddis, great first 4 innings. The bottom fell out in the 5th, right? He started allowing the solo homers. But then your superstar, the guy who's been carrying the burden of this offense all season long, comes through. And I've said it on this podcast before. I love when that ball hits the gap in right center at Progressive Field. Like when that ball hits that gap and it rolls all the way to the wall at Progressive Field, you could hear like Matt Underwood and Tom Hamilton, like, it'll get down and it'll go all the way to the wall. As soon as that happened, I knew we were winning that game. Stephen Kwan was not stopping at third base. Like that felt like the turning point. And I know that's so cliche, but that felt like such a big win after such a heartbreaking loss, knowing you have to go into Baltimore.
You mentioned, and not that he deserves any real airtime, but you're talking about Fry. So they mentioned on TV that Fry was never even a full-time catcher at the minor league level. So I guess I want your opinion on this. What do you think about this? We should be looking at what Cam Gallagher, Zunino, and a little bit that Fry does. We have to look at the same way you would look at any guys that are just eating up innings right now, waiting for guys coming up from the minor leagues. Because I don't know if you read about with Allen and Bibee, they're only going to have so many innings this year. And I know you want to start getting into talking about potential of a six-man rotation. But to me, I'm looking at these catchers are just eating up innings to buy time and wait until Bo Naylor's going to come up. You know that Bo Naylor at spring training was a better catcher than the guys on the major league roster. However, they did not want him up all season to try to manage the pitching staff. And can you imagine the difficulty he would have had that the other guys already had, like a Zunino that has some experience? But I think, when I just can't wait till Bo Naylor's up, right?
Yeah.
But I get it. But I think these guys are just eating up these innings at the beginning of the year. And I know Naylor's playing at AAA level, but I think it's to minimize his major league innings this season in order to bring him up later this season. And I think he's going to be that not only offensive, but defensive weapon that we need, that shot in the arm. What do you
And that's the
think
thing
on
that people question is his defense, that his defense has taken a step back this year. And as far, I'm not too concerned about him throwing out runners because nobody's really doing that, even at the big league level this year. With the bigger bases, it's so much harder. And the pickoff rules, it's a lot more difficult to throw runners out. And that's, it's just kind of the new game of baseball. So if he can come up, and I think his potential offensively is light years better than what Zunino and Cam Gallagher can give you right now. I like Cam Gallagher as the backup. Like, if it came down to it, I'd eat the $6 million and I'd cut ties with Zunino over Cam Gallagher. Like, you got starters praising Cam Gallagher's game calling. Tanner Bibee's dad praising Cam Gallagher's game calling. And you can see the difference in the starters when Gallagher starts versus when Zunino starts. Right? Like, I'm not blaming Mike Zunino at all for last night. Like, I'm not doing that. He was the catcher last night. Cal just never looked right. And what was most impressive to me, despite all that, right? And I'm transitioning now back from I'm just so excited about this offense. I talked about Bo Naylor's potential and it got me so hype about the offense again.
Who are you and where were you last week?
See, I'm back. I'm all the way back, and this is the toxic relationship I have with the Cleveland Guardians. We could be dead in the water. Like, for 3 straight weeks, all I did was sit on here and vent about how frustrated I was, like most of us were throughout the first 2 months of the season. But then it's like they had that walk-off hit Sunday. Like, I was dogging them all night Saturday night. This is a joke. How can we not win when our pitching gives up 2 hits? This is ridiculous. Like, DFA everybody. I don't even care right now. Then Sunday, Jose has the walk-off hit, and I'm all the way back in. I'm all the way back to, looking at scenarios where we could leave Minnesota this weekend in first place. But we have so much exciting things happening this week, right? I was worried that Baltimore was going to be almost like a trap series. I know Baltimore's a really good team, but we got a 4-game set coming up with Minnesota in their house. And then last night, right, we come out and we win the first game on Memorial Day, I was so glad to see them carry that momentum. Whatever momentum there is in baseball, they carried it right into Baltimore. Then they're down 7-0 after 2 innings last night with Cal. Like I said, just no command all night. He was getting frustrated. I have a theory as to why we'll get to in a minute. But they bounced back. They kept fighting. Like, even a week ago, James, if I were to tell you we're down 7-0, we'd probably be flipping the channel. Like, there's no way that 1-0 felt like 11-0. But last night, they only lost 8-5, right? They outscored Baltimore 5-1 the rest of the game. They actually showed some fight. I don't know what the hell was going on with Will Brennan in right field yesterday. That was really bizarre behavior from Chill Will, Kill Will, Silly Willy, whatever he's calling himself these days. That was some bizarre behavior out in right field. I don't know if the ball was carrying super crazy out there, but he alone was responsible for like 3 of those runs. But Cal was just bad. So I'm not even pinning it on him. It's just the fact that this team was able to fight back. Josh Bell had a 2-out RBI. Josh Naylor had 2-out RBIs. Andres Jimenez had 2 hits, followed up by 4 more hits today. Like, for me, those offensive developments, I would have to imagine gives this team a ton of confidence heading into Minnesota this weekend.
Well, they should. I mean, this is some great momentum that we've been waiting for offensively. I know Bieber had a rough start today.
On
He's
his
like, "Hold
birthday,
my-"
too, man.
I know.
Baseball
Yeah,
sucks sometimes.
so,
He
you know,
couldn't even get the win. That's
right. I mean,
he never
Cal
goes
gives up
4
7
innings.
runs.
Yeah.
He gives up 7 runs yesterday, and then Bieber's hold my beer. You know, here's my 7. I'm going to be on the
Right.
hook for.
And that strike zone, though, I will say, I don't know how much to take from the pitching in this game, just because, like, that umpire strike zone, like, he was running a tight ship out there. Like, there were no corners. You could not get the corners.
Yeah, and that's something that, you know, speaking of strike zone, over the weekend, I watched on ESPN, they had a special report talking about the ABS system, the automated ball strike system for the robo ump. And, you know, it's being used in all 30 AAA ballparks. They're using it in half of the games. There's 12 speed cameras that can track the ball within a tenth of an inch. So if that
Wow.
I wanted to hear that detail, because it's one thing to throw a camera up, but it's like, how accurate is it? But within a
Right.
tenth of an inch. They said on the days the ABS isn't used, players can challenge up to 3 failed challenges per game.
Like the
Which,
players themselves can?
yes,
The pitchers?
the players can.
Or the hitters?
So anybody that's followed and heard me talk about the instant replay in tennis, you know, the player raises his racket towards the chair umpire. They throw it up on the board. Everybody watches the balls, it in or out. It's kind of the same thing. I do want to see that, though. I have not seen video of at a AAA ballpark when they do challenge. I would like to see, is it up on the scoreboard? Does everybody see it? You know, like the pitch coming in, hitting the strike zone. To me, that adds to the excitement of it, because that's basically how the tennis one is set up.
I think they need it. I think it's time.
Yeah, and one thing they talked about, they said it's going to be a few years yet. They mentioned that having the challenge system could be in place by 2025, probably at the earliest, because they're still gathering a lot of data on it. But they said most likely what they would do is implement this challenge situation with ABS rather than just put it 100% balls and strikes to the robo ump, because it would be difficult to walk that back once it's in place. So to me, you know, you have umpires too that are concerned about their jobs, from calling balls and strikes. So there's a little bit, you know, of course they're going to provide negative feedback on that, because they want to be behind the plate and call balls and strikes. But we're all about that accuracy. We're all about that data right now. But like I said, from what they reported, it's going to take a couple of years, but there is some success being reported out of AAA. So,
I mean, it can't hurt. Like, not even just with baseball. I kind of feel like sports in general, the referees, the officials, the umpires. I don't know if it's their ego or what, but there's too many of them that want to like be the star of the show. Like, and I don't think officials, umpires should ever decide the outcome of a game.
I can tell you something that, you know, you would have probably been too young, but when NFL got instant replay, one thing the Hall of Fame coach Don Shula said, he said, if it works one time and gets it right, it's worth it. Just in one game, you know, with one correction, it makes it worth it, and it shows its value. So we all know it's coming, because they've tested the pitch clock in the minor leagues. Now it's here, right? And hey, I like that the game's not going 3-4 hours long, especially during the week.
Yeah. And it's weird you say that, because today there was so much offense in the game today that the game actually went over 3 hours, which Hasn't happened much with the Guardians this year because they can't get any offense rolling most of the time. And I think games like this, if you have the occasional 3-hour game, I think it's fine. Like, especially if there's a lot of offense. Like, as long as there's action, I don't think fans are really complaining about that. But when it's like stoppages and before the pitch clock, pitchers were stepping off, hitters were stepping out of the box, and it was like, that's when it gets kind of boring. But I do think this automated strike zone is going to be so good for the game. Like, I've been so curious to see how that's been working in the minor leagues, because so many times, like, you look at these umpires report cards they have on social media now where the umpire gets graded after each game, and some of them just don't look very good. And some of the biggest misses are in the biggest moments of the game. And these umpires are human. You know, no human is going to be perfect. Not that technology is going to be perfect either, but if nothing else, what do you got to lose at this point? It's
I
kind of
got
how I
something
feel.
for you, Mel. What do you think about this? So if you're a home plate umpire and you're back there calling balls and strikes and you got a flamethrower on the mound, that's got to be a hell of a lot easier than somebody that throws like a Chris Sale all game. You know,
Yeah.
throws those left-handed, you know, looking like it's coming from first base, sliders and curves. And I mean, that's got to be difficult. So I would wonder whether or not like some of those scores that they get, I mean, yeah, it is. It's either a ball or a strike, but I would probably imagine if I was behind home plate, like, damn, this is going to be a little bit tougher to make sure I keep my strike zone, you know, versus the other. So that's just my thought.
Yeah, I'm all for it. Let's go. Real quick, before we move on to the pitching side of things, Josh Naylor. I know we all know he's been hot because he was carrying this offense for a while. The month of May, he's batting .261 with a .478 slugging, 4 home runs, and 16 RBIs. In the last 7 days alone now, and this isn't even updated, this is before the game today, he's batting .333 with 2 RBIs and a double this week, but he's got a .429 on base percentage. Like, Josh Naylor has some goofy at-bats sometimes, but like, he's working his way on base. And I think I owe him and Tito an apology because I wanted to bash my head against the wall every time I saw him in the lineup against the lefty, because I think he went like the first month of the season without even having a hit off a lefty. And he's like crushing lefties now. His 3-run homer today was off a lefty. Like, out of nowhere, Josh Naylor is like this lefty masher. And I think what we're seeing with this offense is the adjustments are finally starting to pay off. Like, Hammy was talking, I was outside cleaning my pool today after work, opening this pool up for the season. So I'm listening to Hammy on the radio, and he's saying like guys like Josh Bell and Andres Jimenez, they're guys who like hate struggling so much that they're constantly tinkering. Where Hammy was saying Jimenez will have a game where he has 4 at-bats and 4 different stances in the box. And like, that's a hitting coach's worst nightmare. Like, trust the process. The results will come, like, be consistent. And I think we may be starting to see that finally. Like, Josh Bell, his home run today was so good to see. I'm so sick of seeing this dude ground out to first base. Like, you could just like put it on a loop.
weekly ground out too. It's just, it looks bad. It's nothing
like,
that gets crushed. Yeah, it looks like this giant swing, and then that's what came
like,
from the bat. I mean,
he looks like somebody just maced him. Like, like barely swinging, and then he's like on his way to first. And then he's like jogging back to the dugout, like, yeah, I made contact. Like, I didn't strike out. And we've talked about that. But I love seeing the slugging starting to come. The only complaint, because I'm done talking about him at Rosario. We all know he's not the best shortstop on this team. Gabriel Arias is raking right now. He had a 441-foot home run to dead center today. We know he's the best shortstop on this current roster. And it just is what it is. It's just not going anywhere, so I'm just not going to complain about it anymore. But what I am going to mention is, how long do you roll with Miles Straw as your everyday starting center fielder
Well, the
in an
question is,
outfield that desperately needs offense?
we've already answered that, you and I. It's how long is Tito going to keep him there? And right now, he's going to stay, Mel. You know it, because there's nobody playing him out of that position.
And I'm glad you led me to my next point. There's a big decision coming up this week. And I'm going to be paying attention closely to this decision. And it's going to tell me a lot about, are we willing to put the best guys out there, whether it's starting the game, coming in relief, or in the starting lineup? Are we going to put those guys, the best guys that give us the best chance to win? Or are we going to put the guys out there because we're worried about their feelings? And here's Miles Straw. I've said it before. We know fourth outfielder is his best role. Come in, dominate defensively late, come in, pinch run, steal a base, hopefully score a run. Start maybe 2 times a week, right? The goal is, you're talking about who could replace him. Will Brennan's starting to heat up again. Slide Will Brennan to center. And your goal is, in July, you're going to look to upgrade right field. Because the reality right now is you need more slugging from your outfield. We've talked about this for weeks. And George Valera just isn't healthy this year. It's unfortunate. It's a terrible timing for him to have all these injury issues, but it just is what it is. That's where you want to upgrade. That would be their best case scenario. If their pitching can continue the way that it is right now, if they could add one more power bat, I'm back. This team could go deep in the playoffs again. Their bullpen has allowed 2 runs in the last 28 innings. So their bullpen isn't as bad as we think it is. They were just being misused. Like, Emmanuel Clase didn't need to pitch today, but it's little things like that. Like, you don't need to get Emmanuel Clase working. Like, he leads the league in appearances, and he's going to have plenty more appearances because this team doesn't have many games where they blow a team out. Right? So it's like, our bullpen's good enough. Our starting rotation could be good enough. Right? And that's obviously what we're talking about here, James, is we got Aaron Savali coming off the IL. My guy Civ coming back on Friday. He's taking Hunter Gaddis' spot. So that, to me, was the easy decision. All right, slide Savali right into Gaddis' spot, put Gaddis in the pen, or option him to AAA, whatever you got to do to get Savali back up here. But then you have Tristan McKenzie. And that's the tougher one, because not only do you need to make room on the active roster, you also need to make a 40-man move because he's on the 60-day injured list. For me, Jose Tena probably might be a likely DFA candidate. They held on to him for too long, too much depth at the shortstop position, and he's just having an awful year in Akron. He could be a likely DFA candidate, but then it's like, okay, next step. How do you get him on the active roster? Do you DFA a catcher, David Fry, Cam Gallagher? I wouldn't get rid of Cam Gallagher. Do you option Karinchak to Columbus? He walked the bases loaded over the weekend. But then it's like, this whole time they've had his rehab starts lining up with Cal Quantrill's spot in the rotation. And then Cal Quantrill had a stinker last night. And I'm wondering, Todd was kind of hinting that the decision had been made prior to the game yesterday. I wonder if there was some frustration. Like, Tito talked about Cal being too amped up early in the game yesterday. I wonder if the plan is Tristan to slide into that spot Sunday where Cal was, and Cal's kind of pissed off that he's got to go back to the bullpen.
Well, I mean, I'll go back. I'm still stuck on what you said about Tito, because I've listened to you and our Believe Land Media King, Kevin, talk all this crap about Tito, and you just said about managing, about you can't be worrying about anybody's feelings. The truth is, you have to manage egos. You have to manage people's mindsets. And if he's guilty of anything, Francona, it's because he is loyal to his players to a fault. And he's going to run them out there and give them every opportunity, first, second, and third opportunity to succeed. And there's something to be said about that. That's why, since he's been in Cleveland, that we have a good clubhouse culture, is because these guys, why do you think these guys run down first baseline and hustle their ass off? It's because they respect their manager. And if he loses that locker room, you think that, the lack of power is a problem. We're going to have a lot more problems, but we have a lot of high quality, high character guys in this locker room. And that's why he's willing to stick with them, because he's telling them, you need to stick to the basics. It's hard work. It's show up on time, be consistent, keep putting in the work, and it's going to happen, because there's so much failure in baseball that it's going to come through in time. And we're starting to see some of that in the last two series where we're starting to hit the baseball. But I mean, Francona's 17th all time in wins as a manager in Major League Baseball. He's won 2 Manager of the Year awards in Cleveland. He won 2 World Series with the Red Sox. And if you could imagine, if we had that kind of payroll and that kind of talent on our squad, what we could do with that. But we don't. So that means that he's doing even more with less. When you really think about it.
My thing with Tito is, sure, you have to manage egos. Sure, you want to be loyal to your guys. But here's the other end of it. That kind of stuff hurts you in a game. Tito, this is not to downplay Tito's career. He's made history. He's done a lot of great things in his very long career. I just think the career of every manager comes to an end. He's never been the analytical guy. He's never been the guy to make decisions.
Never going to be.
Right. And this is my thing, though. When you have a decision like this coming up, where Tristan McKenzie needs back in the rotation, your options are Tanner Bibee, Logan Allen, or Cal Quantrill. If they send one of those kids down, who have been arguably your 2 best starters, if you send either one of those kids down, who are now in Rookie of the Year conversations because you're worried about Super 2 and other bullshit like this, are you sending the best message to your team and to your fans that you're really trying to win this year? Because they've been a million times better than Cal Quantrill has. And if Cal Quantrill were to stay in this rotation over one of those kids, you're caring more about feelings than you are about, we're putting our best guys out there each time out. We're going to go with the best 5 guys. Cal, I'm sorry, you're going to earn less in a bullpen role, but I think the goal would ultimately be to trade him at that point. But if you move him to the bullpen, does that kill all his trade value anyways?
What is his trade value? What is
I think pitching is at a premium.
Trade value?
If you look at Cal Quantrill, look at what guys like Taijuan Walker and Jameson Taillon got on the free agent market. It was straight highway robbery. And when you look at teams like the Mets and the Dodgers, even Tampa Bay to a certain extent, when you look at some of these contenders who have all these rotation injuries already, they will pay for a starter. It's the same way with the Cardinals and the Orioles. They had a bullpen game today for essentially no reason, just because they don't even really have 5 guys. And that's why St. Louis, LA, and Baltimore have always made the most sense for a starter trade. Bieber, I don't think it's likely he gets moved. If they're still hanging around within 5 games for the division, they're going to see selling Bieber off as a selling move, when really I think it's addition by subtraction, because him and Cal's value is starting to decrease. And the Guardians have always been so good at trading guys at their peak value, not waiting until the regression kicks in, right? But it all depends on the return. People talk about the Luis Castillo trade last year. The Guardians are not getting 3 top 10 prospects for Shane Bieber. I don't care if you think he's better than Luis Castillo. He's not the sexy stuff starter that Luis Castillo is. And the Mariners drastically overpaid, right? We can't look that high for Bieber. If you could get a major league ready outfielder, that's great, but it's not going to be Jordan Walker from the Cardinals straight up. It's not going to be Colton Cowser from the Orioles straight up, right? You're going to have to expand that deal and add some other pieces in. Same with Cal. He would probably be like, I don't know, a mid double A, maybe triple A type guy. But like, you're not going to get much. It's more just doing him a solid, like, hey, dude, go be great in the rotation somewhere because you're a great number 5. We just have better options as our number 5. I think it more would be like doing him a solid at that point. But again, it just comes down to, are we going to care more about feelings or are we going to put the best guys out there to win? Because tough decisions have to be made when your team's making the leap, especially when it's guys who aren't going to be here next year.
Well, I care about the best guys being out there to win more after All-Star break than I do before All-Star break.
By the way, Tyler Freeman's still missing in action. We pray for his safe return to the Guardians lineup at
Is
some
he on your
point.
milk cart?
He's got to be on a milk carton somewhere. I feel so bad for that kid. He would be a guy you would probably add into a deal to expand it because I don't know if they just don't think he's part of the future, but he's not getting a fair shake here, and it's really a bummer. But we're on a high note right now. Like we mentioned, Guardians won 2 straight series. And they are headed to Minnesota for a big 4-game series against the Minnesota Twins. As of now, we have Tanner Bibee versus Pablo Lopez, who I scream for all winter long. And if he dominates us tomorrow night, I'm going to be so pissed off. But luckily, we have Tanner Bibee going against him, so I think we're okay there. Then Aaron Savali making his return Friday night against Bailey Ober, who dominated us last time. Saturday, we got Logan Allen against Sonny Gray. And then Sunday, we have Undecided versus Joe Ryan.
Ooh, Undecided is undefeated.
I hear that guy's really good.
It's tough.
And just a quick note, Tristan McKenzie's rehab start did get cut short yesterday in AAA due to rain. He only got to throw 40-something pitches. They wanted him around 85. I'm not too worried about it. They still said today that he's working out in Columbus today and he'll join the team in Minnesota. So I'm sure there's a mound somewhere he was able to throw off of and get those other 40 pitches in. If I were a betting woman, which I am sometimes, I'd say we see Tristan McKenzie on Sunday against Joe Ryan. Welcome back, Sticks. You got Joe Ryan.
Well, I hope it all lines up like that because of I heard Andre talk about there might be some rain this weekend. So in Minnesota, we're going to be great here. We're going to be baking hot, but in Minnesota,
my pool should be open. It's taken a week. So if I'm not active much on social media, it's because I'm out scooping leaves out of our pool for the 5th day in a row. But we want to thank everybody.
You'll have a waterproof phone case in there tweeting.
I'm telling you.
I know it.
Get a pool,
You're
they
dedicated.
said. It'd be fun, they said. But we want to thank everybody for listening here tonight. We hope this was a more upbeat episode for you because our offense is alive. And it is so great to see. It's things you love to see. Make sure you follow the podcast page on Twitter at GuardiansOTCLE. Check out all our Believe Land Media content on Instagram, TikTok, and head on over to BelieveLandMediaLLC.com for all your professional sports, high school sports, and Ohio State Buckeyes sports news. We got you covered on the podcast and the written content. And like James said, we're going to spend the weekend grilling out, swimming, enjoying some Guardians baseball. Congratulations to your daughter. Graduation season is upon us. We hope you all stay safe and you stay healthy and we keep cheering on those Guardians. Have a good night, everybody.
Take care. Go Guards.
Go Guardians.